called Rainbow is one of my favorite lessons, just really talking about how to present nutrition without getting a million fancy words that people just get lost and overwhelmed and realize they just would rather just get a Twinkie, right? I think sometimes we do a disservice. I believe in organic food. I believe in, good farming, local farming, pick it fresh. But when you discourage people away from even the basic fruits and vegetables they can get in the grocery store, sometimes they're just going to opt for a Twinkie, right? So we don't want to elevate certain kinds of fruits and vegetables so high that we almost push down the value of other fruits and vegetables, because ultimately any fruit or vegetable is going to be better for them than most of what they will choose as an alternative. So talking about some of that, we can share what we do with soybeans. The last lesson, the life of the flesh is in the blood, is a beautiful lesson, and the Bible is incorporated in all of these. That one is particularly about iron and iron sources, and a lot of people don't even realize they're anemic. Like, for example, I'm going to give you a quick test. Pull out your hand and look at the lines where your skin is folded, and tell me what color are those lines. I'm hearing red. I'm hoping red for the most part. And it might be slightly different with different skin tones. So brownishes works. That makes sense. If you have those lines that are more clear and there's not like a dark, nice color there, you probably have an issue with anemia. And you want to look into that. You don't? Okay, good. He's celebrating. Good. So that's just a simple way. There's other little fingernail tests, tongue tests, certain things like that that we teach just to help people identify what issues they might be facing. Then with sanitation, one of the things we plan to do, we notice these outhouses over here, right? What should be outside an outhouse? Something to wash your hands, right? The World Health Organization says that 80% of diseases can be prevented by hand washing. But we don't have running water up here, right? So how are we going to do that? Has anybody ever heard of a tippy tap? A tippy tap. These guys have been studying the FARMSTEW book, so that's awesome.
I thought we tried to make one.
You want to make one this afternoon?
Tried to.
You tried to? Okay, well, we're going to do that this afternoon together, okay? So that this little outhouse has a hygienic way for people to come back, because you don't want to go from the outhouse and then come and be shaking hands. Happy Sabbath, everybody, right? So we thought we need to take care of that this afternoon. Okay, so we have other things, preventing pests and parasites. Some of these things are more relevant in a tropical environment, but nevertheless we have our own germs, our own bugs, and cleanliness is truly next to godliness. So even thinking about, when things break down and there's no more trash trucks coming by, what are you going to do with your refuse? Where should you dig a pit? How far away from your house? How far away from your water source? All of that is in here, and we're teaching that to people around the world, and it might very well soon become relevant to us. On the next page, temperance. I know here and really all over the world, temperance is such a huge issue, and it's one of the major underlying causes. Lack of temperance is one of the underlying causes for a tremendous proportion of hunger, disease, and poverty. And really, when the parents are strung out, what's going to be happening with the kids, right? They're not going to get what they need. And the parents aren't getting what they need. Nobody's getting what they need. All the other problems are just compounding from that. So we have a temperance lesson we are happy to share. And then also we do touch on what we call the innocent addictions, the caffeine, the sugars, and those kind of things. And one of the things I wrote an article a couple of years ago in Lake Union Herald, and looking at sugar in particular, I said, if you need help getting over your sugar addiction, just do a little research about where in the world people are growing sugar. The sugar cane fields throughout the world are growing this poison in all these places where they could be growing food for their own people. They're generally in, tropical climate countries, because that's where the canes grow. And those same countries are typically where there's severe malnutrition amongst millions of children. And so to think about it not just for yourself and your own body and your own immune system, which are all good reasons to try to kick the sugar habit, but to think about it also for a global equity type choice. There's some power in that. Then under enterprise, which is something that our FARMSTEW health message has that nobody else has in their health message, I feel like this idea was planted in my mind back 30 years ago. I had a professor at Johns Hopkins, and he was kind of a radical. His name was Vicente Navarro, and he was from Chile. And most of the professors were medical doctors, and this guy was a social scientist. And I remember him saying that the very, very best thing you could do for public health or for anybody's health was for them to get a job or create a job, to have meaningful employment. Then they can make all the right choices or better choices, or at least they have the opportunity to do so. So for us, helping people start enterprises starts with having that change of an attitude. So we have a lesson there called Consider the Ant. And you probably know the proverb. What does the rest of that sentence say?
Consider her ways and be wise.
Exactly. Consider the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. So we just taught this lesson actually in Cuba over the phone. We use an app to teach Bible workers in Cuba every Monday morning. Of course, it was in Spanish. I speak Spanish, but not that well. So my colleague Elizabeth from Bolivia was teaching it. And we have a lesson that has a tremendous wealth of information about the ant. And the discussion after the lesson was so powerful. People were just totally excited about all the possibilities. And one of the people that was on the call, you may know Caleb Rooney. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he is now in Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. He came to our training in Colorado in March, and I think that's maybe partly how I got here, or got invited here. But Caleb, Chris and I talked to him earlier in the week, and he is so excited about being able to bring this FARMSTEW message to the people that he's now living around in Nicaragua. And I was telling him, he said, well, should we just start in this village? But I'm interacting with all these people in these other villages, and I'm not sure how to get started and everything. So I was telling him about these phone calls in Cuba. And I said, we're doing weekly 1 hour. We have a PowerPoint, a script. It's already in Spanish. It's ready to go. If you wanted to, wherever you meet people in all these villages, you could invite them to a 1 hour call that you could lead. And he was like intrigued. And I said, why don't you join us in Cuba on Monday, and you can check it out. And so he was the first one to comment on the ant lesson. And he was so excited about all that he had learned about considering the ants and how he might be able to teach that. So that's one of the ways that we are sharing the recipe. And I don't know what languages you guys speak. Maybe you speak languages, or maybe you have connections somewhere else, and you could start doing this just 1 hour, calling it sort of like a FARMSTEW digital health evangelism. So it might be, we're actually trying to start it in Brazil too. I was down there speaking at the Adventist Agricultural Association, and so we have about 30 people on a list that are interested. So we have a young woman translating from Spanish into Portuguese. So anyway, so consider the ant. Another thing we have in here that is, I think, really powerful is this Crown Money Map. And how many of you have heard of Crown Financial? Okay, yeah, it's more known in the evangelical world where I came from, and it's very, very well-respected organization that helps people do Christian biblical stewardship. And
Ron Blue?
Sorry?
Is it Ron Blue?
That name is not ringing a bell. What was the guy that named? There was another guy super famous that started it.
Is it Ramsey? No, it's not Ramsey.
It's not Dave Ramsey either, but it's a Dave Ramsey-ish type program.
Oh, the
Yeah.
guy from England?
I can't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But they have these Crown Financial Centers in a few places around the world, and this one was developed in Africa. It's called the African Money Map, but it, again, can be applied anywhere. But it's a very sort of like primitive, I guess, story, of a young man who's in debt and really struggling. And, it's, I say primitive, that's not the right word, but just, someone that's very, very low income who uses the Bible, and we go through the Bible and understand possessions differently, understand stewardship differently, and it takes through a whole story of him basically building up his capacity in his life and, starting a business and being able to thrive as a family. And so this was the first time Crown ever let another group print their materials in their book. So FARMSTEW is very, very blessed with that partnership. And now we have this book actually in, I think, 6 languages, working towards 8. And so we're actually translating it into different languages as well, the Crown Money Map. And then lastly, our last letter is water. We do things, we would need a sunny day and a couple days, but I can teach the method of water purification. If people are interested, we may need to at some point get water from impure sources. And so we have that option. And then looking, again, charcoal, which is taught in a number of other health messages too, but we decided we really needed to get charcoal in there just in case we were reaching people that other Adventist groups hadn't reached. And then also water treatments. We do a little bit with hydrotherapy in here, but also, how many of you have heard of ORS, oral rehydration solution? Okay, oral rehydration. Oh, yay, our FARMSTEW students back there. Oral rehydration solution is another just like little trick you can have up your sleeve if someone's sick with intestinal diseases or vomiting. You can surely save lives, especially lives of children. Millions of children's lives have been saved through a simple, basically electrolyte solution that you can make with simple ingredients. If you have coconuts, the coconuts are perfect already, but it's just a simple sugar salt solution that can rehydrate a body and save someone's life. So, and then lastly, in the summary section, we have just some ideas about, like I mentioned, community development. How do you pioneer the work of FARMSTEW in an area? And so those are kind of like the laundry list of options, and I wanted to just kind of put them out there to you to get some feedback of what would you like to learn this afternoon.
Enterprise.
The enterprise, we have a vote for that.
ORS.
ORS, okay. And we're going to do the tip tap because we got to take care of the tip tap issue here. And how about nutrition? Do you guys feel like pretty strong in that regard, or would you want sort of a new strategy on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never have too much.
What?
He wants it all.
Oh, okay, good. That's great. All right, so I'm thinking if you can help me remember, Krista, we're going to do a little bit on enterprise, a little bit on the ORS and just why we need that, and then a little bit on nutrition and our tippy tap lesson. I think that'll probably take us the 4 hours, and if we have anything else, we'll throw in a couple extra things. I'll just mention as I close and we get ready for lunch, I wanted to share a story, one more. This country is South Sudan, and it's one of the most hungry countries in the world, and we were invited to go there by the president of the Church of South Sudan. The red colors mean hunger to the level of potential famine. The yellows are stressed, and the orange is crisis. So you can see this country is in dire straits. And we have 30,000 Adventists there. And praise be to God, I'll just point here. We started down here in Juba, that's the capital city. I've never seen a capital city where it looks like a village. There's about a few city blocks, and then the rest of it just looks like you're out in the village. It's the world's youngest country, and sadly they've been pretty much still at war during their, I think, 14-year history now as a country. But there are faithful Adventist people there, and praise be to God, in the last 3 years, we've been able to launch in a bunch of different parts of the country with training people and then sending them out as stipended workers that are able to be really making a difference and bringing this same message out into the village. So this story is up here in this WOW area, and we're working also down here in Tonge, which is in the almost famine type area. And we did this training up in WOW. And the person right with the rainbow chart in the middle, that's our country director, Lassou. And then the people in yellow are some of our trainers. And so we met, and these are all church members out in front of the church. And they had a 5-day intensive training with FARMSTEW focus. And some of them, they chose certain meals not to eat so that they could buy bicycles. And they elected a couple of them to become FARMSTEW volunteers. This is before we had staff up in this area. And it's partly why we have staff in this area. We saw how dedicated they were. So they bought bicycles so that they could take the message further and get from village to village and do the house-to-house work that Sister White talks about. Now, praise be to God, we have all of these people working for FARMSTEW in this whole area. And if you see Western Bar Agazal, it's a predominantly, like it's in the north part of South Sudan, so it's getting more into the Muslim part of the country above it, which is Sudan. And when I was there in March, we had 5 people actually come down from the country of Sudan. Several of them were Muslim converts that also got trained in FARMSTEW. So we're trying to eke our way up into the 1040 window, and one of the translations is for Arabic for our book. So, but what was so exciting is the main pastor who runs this whole district, his name is Pastor Isaiah Oak, and he wrote a strategic plan. And I'm sharing this with you to inspire your own plans as you think about how could I do health ministry, and maybe particularly health ministry with a FARMSTEW spin on it in your community. So we had, when the church came into the region, 1994, going over time, and then here in 2020 was when FARMSTEW entered into their area. And he sees that as such a big deal. It made it on the top of the map here. But this part is what I think is very, very interesting. Pastor Oak produced this in his report. It says that a poor church produces poor members, corrupt members, thieves, even among leaders, lazy complaining members, unhealthy members, lousy worshipers, ineffective members, ineffective leaders, unsaved community, dead sinners for hell. Pretty profound, right? And last night we were talking about Isaiah 58, and Sister White saying that Isaiah 58 work, which really the work of FARMSTEW is inspired by, is the type of work that will bring life into the churches, right? So it's like the opposite of all this. We're about bringing abundant life. This is the thief coming to kill, steal, and destroy even the churches. And he kind of got in trouble for this, actually, but he says, who should blame? The leaders. And really we're all supposed to be leaders in our church. There's nobody supposed to be just a pew warmer. And he says, what is the solution? FARMSTEW. And we were so honored and amazed when we got this report. And praise be to God. I just want to show you what their classes look like. And in fact, it's not so different. Usually when I show this next picture, it's so different from what it looks like there. But this is their classroom and one of their trainers. And this is Patrick here standing up, and he's got the FARMSTEW poster, and he's explaining the 8 letters and what they mean. And this is their farming. They don't have hoop houses or like the fancy shade cloths or PVC pipes or anything, but they have sticks. And they protect their little baby seedlings from the intensively hot sun with their little stick structure. And they're just very creative, very resourceful, and doing what they can with what they have. And FARMSTEW is bringing in some of the things like high quality seeds and the education and training. And we're confronting the things that are so important to confront. And I just want to share the story of Mary. I got the same report, and there was a caption under there that said, "This is Mary's garden and she's not dead." And I was like, what? Because, sometimes you skim a report and you read the captions first, because I'm always looking, is there a good picture I can use? And I'm like, she's not dead. What are they talking about? And it turns out in that area, partly why there's so much famine and so much hunger is that there are these false religious beliefs that if you work hard and you become prosperous in any way whatsoever, even if it's on a small farm, you're going to die. And there's even, like witch doctors and that kind of thing that are going to help make that happen. And So for this woman, Mary, to be this bold and this faithful and full of faith is what I mean, full of faith, to plant this type of garden. And this is her sweet potato and cassava and corn. She has it quite mixed up, but you know, the fact that she had this abundant life growing and she's not dead was a testimony, not just to her fortitude and strength, but to God. And I really do believe, and this will be my last slide before lunch, that what we're trying to do here is Christ's method alone. And so I just want to share this verse, or this passage again. Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with people as one who desired their good. And we talked about all families, all parents, you know, they want their children to be able to thrive, you know. And even if they don't, it's probably because they're strung out on something. And once they get cleaned up, they would figure out they want their children to thrive. And so Christ showed sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. And then, and then invited them to follow me. So I just want to encourage all of us to think about how we can not just be preppers, you know, taking care of ourselves, looking out for ourselves. We need to do that. It's the responsible thing to do. But we need to be preparing for generosity and kindness and stretching ourselves well beyond our own families and even well beyond our own borders. And I believe our Adventist Church has the answers that the world is seeking. But we need to learn them, practice them, and be ready to share them. So, yeah. So we have our plan for this afternoon. And I do believe we have a plan for lunch, so I want to hand it back over to Keenan.
Blessing?
Okay, you want me to pray for the lunch?
Sure.
Okay.
Pray for this session and the lunch.
Okay, sounds good. Let's bow our heads together. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for this space and this time and the blessing that you give us as your children to have a message of hope. And not just a message, but a methodology to bring hope into people's lives during this strange, strange time in our world's history. And we know, Lord, that you are coming soon. But many people in the world don't know, and they're discouraged and hopeless and anxious and sometimes hungry and sick. And we, Father, want to have an answer for them. We want to be a blessing to them. Thank you for the camp meeting that has been organized here. Thank you for the food that has been prepared by Diane. And Father, we just pray that it will nourish and strengthen our bodies, and we trust that it will because we know it's going to be good food that's actually good for us. And thank you for each and every person that is here. And I pray that our fellowship can be sweet and that we can come back together and learn more and also prepare for the coming Sabbath. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
So will some of our